Today at The Informer we're joined by iCook and the Shadow Minister for Health, Georgie Crozier, who are both here today after a momentous week for Ian. Ian, welcome back. Georgie, glad to have you.
Hi, Michael.
How did you feel last week, Ian, when you woke up to the news that Georgie had managed to wrangle a parliamentary inquiry?
The news of the reopening of the inquiry, that was very, very good news. I mean, I found it extremely difficult in the first inquiry when I was listening to both people from Dandenong Council and Dr. Sutton sit and literally lie to politicians. I just wanted to jump up and yell the truth, but on pain of death, I was told you had to sit there and be quiet and just listen, and that was very difficult. So having an opportunity for them to be cross-examined now on the truth of the matter and what they should have been telling the politicians that were there at that inquiry, yeah, it's excellent. I'm really pleased. And I think it shows the integrity of people like Georgie, that they will stand up, see new information and say, we need to fix this now.
Great stuff. Georgie, was it hard to get this over the line with the crossbenchers?
Well, Michael, I moved a motion firstly in the Parliament, which we didn't get afforded time to debate. So I actually then moved a motion within the committee itself and explained to those crossbenchers about the importance of the parliamentary process and the integrity of the parliamentary process after new evidence had come to light, and that it questioned some of that evidence that was put into the first inquiry. So I felt it was really important to protect the parliamentary process, as well as that what has happened. We've got more evidence and we needed to reopen the inquiry. So I did do some, we had some discussions, but, it was great. It was agreed to, and we are reopening the inquiry into the closure of iCook Foods.
Fantastic stuff. So what's going to be different this time with the inquiry? What new evidence tipped it over?
Well, when I've gone back and had a look at it, with the new evidence that's come forward, I think we've got to call back some of the witnesses that presented to us before, based on that new evidence that we now know, that we didn't know then. There are other witnesses that I think need to come forward that have provided new information that's come into the public domain. One of the things that I was concerned about last time and why we wrote the minority report was around the financial position of Community Chef and the Pitcher Partners report. Before the inquiry was set up, I'd been asking the government for the Pitcher Partners report. It was always denied to me. And in that inquiry, I was able to get it under parliamentary privilege, but it was too late to be able to question some of those findings in that report, and we didn't have that opportunity. So around those issues, there's so much opportunity and there's so much need, I think, to revisit some of these issues that have now come to light and some of the evidence that we heard from in the previous inquiry.
This report, Ian, it asks more questions than what it answers, doesn't it? Especially around the $800,000 that was requested to pump up Community Chef's balance to $1.8 million that they said they needed, the extra $800,000, and it's never been accounted for. There was no due diligence, no inquiry by anyone that we can see as to why it was needed, the $800,000, and it went in and it came out and we're still not sure where it's gone. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The amount of money that actually went through, if you like, that account or the same way, so that's going from the department to Community Chef. So when they give Community Chef money, it turns up as an asset in the Department of Health's books, and then it comes across as a liability in Community Chef's books. Now, Community Chef's books are now gone, and they're all now owned by Western Health that's now taken them over. But literally, just as Community Chef is being transferred into Western Health, it's not just the $1 million facility that they had and the $800,000 that they were given. That account and the way it's accounted for, there's actually $3.3 million literally gone into Community Chef and disappeared. This is at a time when it didn't need it. And so there are a lot of questions. Apart from the losses all the way along and the things I've told you before about the fact that business was charging enough and should have been making money, if you applied its food cost to our business, I'd have a Learjet by now. It should have been make money. So money has gone missing. I have no doubt about that, and we can show you specifically, Wes, that money has gone missing. The question is, where did it go?
And the silence has been deafening, Georgie. The parliamentary inquiry, how does that differ from a royal commission?
Well, Michael, a parliamentary inquiry actually has more powers than a royal commission. So we can subpoena documents, we can subpoena people. So we have got, very large powers. It's a really important part of the parliamentary process that you're able to do that, because through a parliamentary inquiry, there are recommendations that are made to government that could then, for instance, lead to change in legislation or review. So it is incredibly important that, as I keep saying, the integrity of the process is upheld, and that it does have those powers, that people can come before an inquiry and have privilege and be able to say what they need to say without having any, that they can, under that privilege, they won't be sued, or they won't have that those issues hanging over their heads, so to speak. So with that, there is a really strong point too, that you can't lie. There is contempt of Parliament, and that is a serious issue as well. So it's a very important part of the process, as I keep referring to, because of the work that is done in these parliamentary inquiries.
Great. So, Ian, what are you hoping for to come out of this inquiry, apart from the truth?
The truth, if the truth is what comes out, then I will be, then I will be very happy with the result. All we have ever asked for is openness, the truth. We know most of what has happened to us. We have evidence of the crimes that have been committed against us as a family and as a business, and a whole lot of that will come out just by the truth being told. There are some questions we don't have answers to. There are questions, deeper questions of, we know most of why, but the detail. And I also look at the people involved and think, what was their motivation? I mean, are these people just, they get off on destroying other people's lives? I don't know. And I guess as a victim, that's one of the hardest things, is that you keep questioning in your head, I wouldn't do this to someone. Yeah. Why did someone do this to me?
Not only you, Ian, but your 40-plus staff, the
Yep.
suppliers and their families that were affected by it, the integrity and the respect for those in power have all been damaged with this, and I don't see anyone rushing forward to give an explanation or try and explain it away. They've put their heads down in the bunker and resulted in Georgie having to implement this parliamentary inquiry. How do we stop it becoming like the Coates inquiry, where everyone turned up with a bad case of amnesia and...
Oh, the collective amnesia.
Yeah.
That was disgraceful. 10 bureaucrats and 3 ministers and the Premier, all with that collective amnesia. And the thing with that is, what I find so stunning is that the legal costs of all of those people was more than the actual cost of running the inquiry. Now, that was a farce, and people know that. They know that that was farcical. We have to make sure that what is coming before us is absolutely the truth. There are questions that need to be answered. There are, based on the evidence that has been brought forward since that time, based on what I've asked in the Parliament previously, and the government wouldn't answer. There are so many questions here, but it goes to the fact that, has there been a miscarriage of justice? The whole point of the 96 charges and being thrown out the minute, before you step in the court, all of these other issues that have now come forward, the people that have been, for whatever reason, reluctant to be able to put the evidence forward. But I'm also arguing, Michael, the FOIs. I've put FOIs into the department that I'm still waiting on some of these issues. I got one back last week, or 2 weeks ago, from Knox Council, 452 pages, of which 400 were blanked out. The very document that I know exists is not in that, and I'm still waiting on the department to provide me with that information. That is what we're constantly dealing with, this obfuscation, secrecy, and hiding the truth and hiding the information. So I'm determined to get to the bottom of it, because I think there has been some serious issues that have gone on, and if it wasn't for the tenacity and resolve of Ian and the family, then, people could have got away with this.
It really seems we've got the fox guarding the hen house here, with everything controlled from, the freedom of information requests, the IBAC that's underfunded and overworked, the police that have claimed, I think it was a conflict of interest on the report that I saw because Dandenong Police couldn't investigate Dandenong Council. Well, to me, that would infer a bigger conflict of interest.
4 investigations by police into this one matter. I mean, seriously, 4 investigations. So the government has to have some. They've got answers to, they've got questions to answer, I should say, and they've got to be accountable for what they've done, and from everyone that flows underneath them.
On the issue of the FOIs, if a document can be found and can be produced under FOI, then it's things like, if it's in the public interest, it should be released. They can redact things if it's giving someone's personal details, and by personal I mean their home phone number, where they live. Fair enough. You don't. That shouldn't be allowed to just be pushed out there. The document that blew up was a week and a half ago.
The one from
the Ray
Knox.
Christie. Yep. Okay. So that document effectively exonerated iCook Foods, said we didn't produce the food. The other thing that document would have done is that document, if it had been released to me under FOI when I applied for it, it would have been evidence in the criminal case that they filed against me. Now, whenever a council doesn't release a document and they black them out, as Georgie's seen, then they have to put why. So if it's 33(1, then it's because there's personal details, etc. So you might have a name or something blocked out. Okay, then you decide whether that's legitimate or not. This document that exonerated me, that would have been used in a court case, both civil and criminal, do you know what it was removed? You know what the reason for its removal? It's one of the ones they can do is not relevant. How the hell did Knox Council decide that report was not relevant? And in actual fact, doing that to that document is perverting the course of justice all day, every day. If you go to the Crimes Act, anybody who suppresses information that they know or should rightly have known would be used in a criminal or civil law case, from memory, it's 10 years jail. I mean, it's serious stuff.
And that's the thing. The search and the investigation is a search for the truth, not a search for an outcome. So if the truth is that this document showed there were 6 suppliers to Knox Hospital, correct, where this poor lady contracted listeria, and they just went straight for you and said, iCook Foods were the only supplier, and Knox Private Hospital had provided a report back to Ray Christie saying, no, not true, there are 6 suppliers, and that document there that stopped a proper investigation, because somewhere there's a supplier that did have listeria because this woman did contract it and did die. So as much as the health department and Professor Sutton want to say with platitudes, we're not going to apologise for taking health and safety seriously, they've actually done the opposite. And I understand there was meant to be a coronial inquest into the ladies.
No, in actual fact, if the lady had died of, so it was confirmed that she had died of listeria, and listeria, we'll say food poisoning, then yes, that probably would have been referred, and in fact would almost always be, because they would then say, well, it's not a natural death, it was actually caused, and then whoever caused it could end up in a lot of trouble.
Industrial manslaughter?
Well, yes, if you knew that the food was contaminated and you still supplied it to someone, yes, there's all sorts of very serious charges in all of that. But in this case, the woman actually died of pulmonary edema, which is fluid on the lungs, and ischemic heart disease. She had the condition of listeriosis. Now, they have said that she had listeria, effectively listeria meningitis, right? So it gone to the central nervous system. But that was never confirmed, right? And because
no post-mortem.
Well, and there are other ways they could have done it. I mean, if you want to confirm something like that, then you would do a lumbar puncture, and they would know. But that those things never happen. Now, I've spoken to people at that hospital who I know, who knew what was going on at the time. Now, they've said to me, you know, none of that happened. Some of that was just, if you like, a clinical diagnosis, you know, which is an unconfirmed. Now, it might be that a clinical diagnosis was accurate, but until you confirm it, you can't say this is what happened.
But she might have had listeriosis for a very long period of time too.
Yeah.
Which contributed to the other problems.
Well, if you actually do the date lines, it just doesn't work. The woman came in on the 13th, right, and supposedly didn't have it. Now, we don't know if the blood test was done then, no one will tell us. It would seem extraordinary that someone went into a hospital of that size and didn't have a blood test done when she entered. But, you know, putting that to one side, from the 13th to the 23rd is 10 days. When you start doing it, for listeria to enter you, so you have to eat something, so it goes from your stomach, it then enters the bloodstream. So you've got bacteremia, which is just the bacteria itself, bang, is in your bloodstream. Now, that's not a huge problem. It can be easily treated. It goes from that to become septicemia, where you've got a higher load in the blood system, and that's becoming more serious.
Yeah.
And from that, it then goes from that, it then goes into the central nervous system. That's not going to happen by the time she gets it in 7 days. I mean, it's a 14 to 21 day. Every report I have ever read now, and I'm no expert, but I've had to read a lot about this because of what happened to us, it's a 14 to 21 day cycle. It just couldn't have happened in the time frame.
So, Georgie, where to from here? What sort of time frame are we looking at?
Well, Michael, I wanted the hearings to start fairly quickly, but that we couldn't fit that in. So we're hoping to have hearings start in August, and then the report to be tabled in the Parliament in October. So it's a few months, but it's just because there are other work that the committee is doing. But I don't see that it'll interfere with any of that work. It's just we need to get these hearings up and running to get to the bottom of what's gone on.
What do you think will be the main question?
Well, I think there's a lot of questions I've got. I mean, around the evidence that we provided from
the suppression of evidence would have to be when
exactly.
knowingly.
Exactly, and knowing what we've got, and now having the Picture Partners report, having the evidence from the Knox Council, but importantly from the evidence from the Dandenong City Council and what they told us. There are a whole range of issues, and clearly I did ask Elizabeth Garlick about the slug, and there was a definitive no in her answer to that. So I think with the more information that's come out, there are just a multitude of questions that need to be answered. Now, whether we will get to all of those, I'll have to be very strategic in terms of what I ask, because it could take from, I think, you know, here to next Christmas. But I'm hoping that others who are looking at this issue too will be also very interested in those questions we ask and the answers that are provided.
Where does the buck stop with this?
With the government.
All the way up to the Andrews?
Absolutely. This is Department of Health, local council. I mean, they've all got responsibilities, but the government ultimately has a lot of questions to answer on this, and they have from the word go. That's why I put it into question time, why I moved the motion to get the first inquiry up, and now this second, the reopening of the initial inquiry.
And back to the health department, to me as a layperson, it seems just mind-boggling that the conflict of interest, that you can have someone from Dandenong City Council on the board of Community Chef that is in direct competition to iCook Foods with the ability to close down iCook Foods.
Not only that, the information that was then provided to the health department and how the health department actually did what they needed to do on a very serious issue of shutting down a business, and whether that process was followed properly. So that's why I say government, because the department is part of the government. And it goes back to what's happening in relation to why the minister wouldn't give me the financials around Community Chef, how they were operating, the Picture Partners report, that all of those elements, that's the government. Yep. They've got a lot to answer for.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, It's not just closing down a business. Ian had built this business, family business, 40 years.
He could have gone to jail based on what they said.
40 plus staff gone out of work. Like,
and there, look at those impacts to those people. It is a ripple effect, and it's a very, very large ripple effect. And I think that's why I say I take my hat off to Ian and the family for being so tenacious and having such resolve in getting to the bottom of this. For that what's been done to them.
not to mention yourself, Georgie, having great shadow government that holds them to account.
Well, that's my job, holding the government to account. I'll continue to ask the questions and continue to ask this government. They need to be accountable on a range of things, and this is just one of them.
Ian, final word to you. What would you like to wind up with?
Well, I was just listening to what Georgie was saying then, and when you talk about where the buck stops and who it is, I think it just cannot be forgotten that the Food Act was changed in around 2010, and the Minister was Daniel Andrews. Community Chef was funded through the Health Department, and the Minister was Daniel Andrews. Community Chef continued to lose money, and the Food Act that's supposed to be, how should I say, fair for all of us, and we trusted it, and we trusted the Health Department, has corruption written into it, because the fines and everything that they earn from it, that a council writes, they get to keep it all, and that's written into the Act. Once again, it was written in by Daniel Andrews. It would appear that he's just engineered the whole thing, and I think he's the one that has to answer a lot of questions.
And it will be great, thanks to Georgie, to be able to see that answered in Parliament, under parliamentary inquiry, powers greater than a Royal Commission. So, Ian, Georgie, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck, Ian. I'm really rooting for you.
No worries.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.